Hi, and welcome to lesson number 1 in module 2, where we will be talking about business planning. And in this lesson, you will learn about unique selling proposition, or USP. So, the first thing you want to ask yourself when it comes to unique selling proposition and developing a unique selling proposition is, what makes you unique? What makes your product, your service unique from others? And throughout this lesson, we will talk about different things that can make you unique. It could be the job that we talked about in the previous module about idea development and jobs, using the jobs to be done framework. It could be the problem that you solve, and that you solve it, or that it is a unique problem. It could be the solution and how you solve this problem or solve this specific or perform this specific job. But it can also be the package, that you have a unique package that outperforms a combination of every other competitor. It could also be about your disruptive characteristics, but which is the point we will be talking about at the end of this lesson. So let's get into the first one, jobs. As mentioned in module number 1, when we talked about the jobs to be done framework, or basically throughout the whole module 1, jobs is essential. And taking the concept of job into creating a unique selling proposition is essential. So what job does your product solve or perform or service perform? By performing and solving a job that is unique, you have a unique selling proposition. And another question, are there anyone else solving the same job? If so, how are you solving it differently from them? But it isn't only necessary to ask yourself how you solve it differently, but you should also solve it better. And better is something you can talk and discuss a lot about, but what I mean by better, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to have a higher performance, higher graphics for technology, or higher performance, or hard drive space, or anything like that. It doesn't need to be the technical part at all. It has to be user-friendly. If your solution or your product is more user-friendly than your competitors, your product or service will be more appealing and more interesting to your customer and users. So that's one way to developing a unique selling proposition, by creating a product that solves the same problem as someone else's product or service, but you solve it in a better and more user-friendly way. So this is important, but the next one is about the problem. And it has to be, or it doesn't necessarily have to be, but it can be a unique problem. And the job that you do, is it solving a real pain, a real problem that people want to get fixed? Is it a problem that people urge to get solved? Is it something that makes people furious? Is it a problem that makes people angry, frustrated, and constantly looking for solutions? If so, then you're on the right path. But there is one thing now. As mentioned in module 1, you want to shift your mindset towards jobs and not ideas and products and the solution, but talk about the jobs. Are you sure you're not into an idea and not a job? Because focusing the unique selling proposition around the job and creating an idea, a solution, a product around job is more sustainable than creating a solution or a service or a product around an idea. So think about the job and make sure that you're focused around the job and not a simple idea without having a market fit by using the job done framework. And you have to know everything can be solved better. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, when it comes to job, is someone else solving the same job or problem, and how should you solve it better? So one way you can solve it better is by packaging up your solution or your products or your services. So we will talk about that later. The next one is about the solution and how you solve it. How does your product solve the problem is important, because as I mentioned in the job slide, you can solve something in a better way, but the better way doesn't necessarily mean that it has to outperform by performance when it comes to the technological aspect. You don't have to have higher performance in graphics if you are into technology. You don't have to have higher or more hard drive space if you're into technologies. You have to solve it in a more user-friendly way. And make by an example, do you guys know why Apple became so large? The number one reason why Apple became as huge as they are today is because they were user-friendly. Their interface was so simple that anyone understand it by the blink of an eye. And me personally, I was a Microsoft and Windows guy until I think it was 19 years old. I was a patriot and I was just, Windows is the thing. Mac, I will never get a Mac and I will never go over to the Mac OS. But as it turned out, I switched and I'm on Mac, and I don't know why I didn't change earlier. So remember to create a user-friendly service and a product that is easy to understand, easy to use, and don't create another pain. And the next thing, how does your product or solution differ from the competition? Because as we will talk about in the next slide about disruptive characteristics, you have to stand out. You can't just be the same. And there is a saying that goes like this: copying what other people do is camouflage. So think about that. And there's another saying that goes like this: why is it so that we're all born originals but die as copies? And you want to take these two sayings, think about them, reflect about them, and think how can you take those sayings and put it into life when it comes to developing your solution. You want to create something that is unique. You want to differ and be different from your competition so that people see you. And one way could be a more user-friendly and a better looking user interface. And why should people choose you? What do you have to offer that is different, better? If it's design, user interface, then it is more user-friendly. And by providing a more user-friendly service or product, it is more convenient. So then it comes down to, is your solution more convenient than your competition? All these questions are things you have to ask yourself and reflect about when you develop your unique selling proposition, and how your product should solve the solution, or solve the problem or the job. All of the questions that I ask you now throughout this entire lesson is something you have to think about and write down. It is best to actually write it down, because as I mentioned in module number 1, when we actually write down, our brain starts to evaluate and reflect on what we've written, and instead of just telling it out loud or saying it out loud. So think about it, write it down, and give it an answer on every single question. That's your task after you watch this lesson. So now let's get over to next one, which is package. As I mentioned, you can provide a different service or product if you make a package? Do you provide a complete package compared to your competition? Let's take an example, and I will actually use social upcoming in this example. There are tons of courses and educational platforms online about the topic of business development and online marketing. But the problem with most of them, and basically one of the reasons why I created social upcoming, is because most of them specify on only one or two topics. So let's say you have this one network or one platform, and this one specific platform teaches you about Facebook marketing and Instagram marketing. So by taking this course, it could be worth or cost several $100s. You get to become an expert in social media marketing. But if you want to create a business and you don't know how to do idea development, you don't know how to create business planning, which you will learn throughout this whole module, the business planning, where you will learn how to map your business, see how everything works, and connect the dots. Or how to create a website, a sales funnel, and landing page sales pages. Or how to optimize and automate. If you only know social media marketing, that's not worth a damn thing if you don't know everything else. You can outsource it, of course, but that increases the costs. So, our goal with social upcoming is providing a complete package that connects everything that you need, that brings everything together. Not necessarily being as deep, covering the same depth, but we're going pretty wide. And by going wide, you get to see the whole picture, and you can connect the dots yourself. And by knowing something about almost everything, you can make the entire thing better. So that's one thing that makes social upcoming unique, and is a part of our unique selling proposition. So my question to you is, are you providing a sort of package that makes your product or service unique compared to your competition? And does this package make the problem solving easier? And as I mentioned, or Elon Musk also said that by having knowledge in several topics, you can combine those, or the knowledge in these several topics, combine them together and making each one better. So an example would be technology and biology. Combining them, you can create something better within both of the topics. So by providing a package, you will provide or give the user or the customer a more easier way to solve the problem. And this makes your product or service unique. So think about if you should actually start developing a sort of packaging your solution so that you have several things in the package that makes everything easier and more convenient for the user. Because it is a huge step forward in making you stand out from the crowd and your competition. So the next one is Disruptive Characteristics. And this one is most likely the most important one as well. Because most people, when they develop a product and their unique selling proposition, they think about the traditional parameters or competition parameters. And this is a wrong approach. But what do I mean by the traditional parameters? So, if you're going into developing game consoles for TV, so then you have PlayStation, Xbox, and a couple of other small ones like Nintendo Wii and so on. The most traditional, or the same goes for smartphones and PCs, laptops, pads, tablets. They want to outperform each other on graphics, performance, and battery life. Those are just three to mention. And these are the traditional competition parameters. But it is really hard as a newcomer to the market to compete on equal terms with the giants, with the golems. You have to come with new disruptive parameters, and this is a key to actually making it in a competitive market. But what new disruptive parameters do you bring to the table? Let me give you an example. As I mentioned, PlayStation 4 and Xbox, or it was actually PlayStation 3 at the time, and Xbox 360, when Nintendo Wii were launched. And Xbox and PlayStation 4 have been competing several years on performance, graphics, hard drive space, and so on. But Nintendo Wii did it differently. They knew that they didn't have the budgets or the technology to outperform Xbox and PlayStation, so they introduced a new parameter, which was the control movements, and that you actually could play tennis by swinging your hand with a controller in your hand and making it more interactive. And this new disruptive parameter made Wii to a massive success. And it ate a lot of the market share that PlayStation and Xbox held. And by providing this new disruptive parameter, they both outperformed, they took market shares, and it made it a huge success. Now let's take another example. The taxi industry compared to Uber. The taxi industry has been in a standstill for many years, and the prices is high. So someone thought, okay, how can we make it more convenient? So they made an app. But just having to open an app on your phone and click pick me up, it is more easy than actually calling someone, or if the line is occupied, waiting to receive or for someone to actually take your call. And by also providing people with the opportunity to make money by just registering as a driver, you have another disruptive parameter, which is everyone can make money with it. Everyone can be a taxi driver. So by providing new disruptive parameters, you can outperform the big sharks in the industry. And this is something you have to think about when you're developing your unique selling proposition. Not only how are you providing something differently, like what job you solve, the problem, the solution, or if you're providing a package, but also what new characteristics are you adding to your solution and your mix, your unique selling proposition. Because you cannot, as a small new entrepreneur in a small business, you can't compete on the traditional parameters. You have to bring new to the table, new ones that make you unique and interesting, so that new people, that makes it more convenient or more fun and more interesting for people to try your product or service compared to your competition. So by going through this lesson, you should now be able to identify why people should choose you, your product, your service, instead of someone else's. You should also be able to clearly say what job and problem you do or solve. Because without having the ability to say clearly what your product or service perform or do or solve, you have to actually go back to the drawing table and lay it all out again. Because if you were to pitch something where you couldn't clearly say what job or problem you do or solve, you won't get the attention or the interest of the people that you were pitching your idea to. You should also be able to say what makes your product or service different and better from someone else's. The different could be the new disruptive characteristics or the parameters that you bring to the table. And the better could be that it is more user-friendly, it is easier to use, the user face looks better and is more convenient, and all of these things. So what I want you to do now is go through this entire presentation or lesson, write down every question that were on the slides for job, problem, solution, package, and disruptive characteristics. By writing them all down, or after you've written them all down, I want you to answer every single question on the paper. By answering every one, you get a clearer view of your own unique selling proposition. It also starts a thinking process where your brain starts to evaluate your unique selling proposition. And by doing this, let's say right before you go to bed, your brain will start working, evaluating, reflecting on these questions throughout the night without you actually being aware of it. Because the brain is a powerful machine, the most powerful machine that we have. And by leveraging its workforce at night, maybe something that sets you apart from the crowd. So that's it for this lesson. And in the next lesson, we will be going through resources. So what I want you to do after you've written down all the questions and answered them, I want you to scroll down at the bottom of this page, take a look at the resources that may be used throughout this lesson, but also click the next lesson button to move on to the next lesson. See you in the next lesson.